Welcome to Management 5870 Entrepreneurship. This is the third episode, Self, Company, and Industry Analysis. In this episode, we are going to be reviewing the analysis which forms the basis for the business plan. First of all, the self-analysis. Are you meant to be an entrepreneur? Now, this part doesn't show up in the business plan at all, but it really does form a necessary basis for the entire business plan. Second, we look at the company analysis, and third, the industry analysis. Sun Tzu wrote over 3,000 years ago that if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you'll win 100 battles to every one you lose. If you know yourself but not your enemy, you'll win 1 battle to every one you lose. If you know not yourself or your enemy, you'll lose 100 battles to every one you win. This is still true today. Let's take a look at some of the myths of being an entrepreneur, then what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and finally, what the reality is. Being your own boss and not having to kowtow to anyone. Well, the problem is that there's no shortage of bosses and people you have to kowtow to when you're an entrepreneur. Depending on your situation, there are investors, customers, partners, and here's one that no one ever anticipates: your spouse. That's right. Once the steady paychecks stop, the spouse becomes all too engaged. Getting to do what you want when you want. If you want to work, you can work. If you don't want to work, you don't have to work. Well, you're going to find out that you probably work more hours than you ever thought you were going to work. If you're successful, you got to keep up with your business. And if you're not, you got to work that much harder to change it. And since it's your gig, there's no one to fall back and do it for you. If you don't do it, who will? Well, I want to escape from the stress of the corporate life. Well, that's true. You can. But there are stresses in being an entrepreneur. They're not the same, but they're still stresses. You're going to have headaches. Can you handle those? In most cases, we make our own stress. So as an entrepreneur, you'll have different stresses. They're different, not better or worse, just different. I get to have personal feedback that'll be shorter and faster. No. Now you may see a very slow response time for your feedback because you don't know. It takes a lot of work to start a company. And you don't know if you're being successful until you start finding out if people are going to buy what you're selling. Then there's a great one that says, oh, but there's such a unique feeling of accomplishment if I build something. Well, yes, sort of. But you get the same thing in other jobs, in other situations. Being an entrepreneur doesn't give you a special type of enjoyment unless that's what really turns you on. And that's what really we need to talk about next. Should you be an entrepreneur? Here is some questions posed by Daniel Eisenberg, who's a professor of management practice at Batson College. I would like you to go through and answer these questions yes or no. Not like, well, sort of, kind of, but yes or no. You have to choose. So why don't you go ahead and do that? And then come back and take a look at what the answers are. Well, did you have 17 or more of them being yes? All right, that means you should be an entrepreneur. Maybe. All it means is that you may have a bias to being an entrepreneur. But what's your situation? Do you have debts that have to be paid? Do you have kids in college and tuition to pay? Do you have alimony? Do you want to take it easy? Well, if so, maybe you better wait. Because in those situations, you need to have in guaranteed income, which you probably have with a steady job. On the other hand, Do you have a little extra cash in the bank? Credit cards that don't have any balance on them? Do you have a spouse or a partner or a friend or kids that'll support you and cheer you on? If so, then maybe you need to start thinking about starting a business. At that point, it means, gee, what type of business do I want to start? And don't let the idea that, gee, I'm over 50. I can't start a business. It's too late for me. More people today over 50 are starting businesses, some because they have to, others because they want to. You can too. It just means that you have to talk to people who've made the plunge. You need to learn how to plan and deliver a product or service. Think about the small business that you might buy or start. Talk to people with whom you like to work. And talk to your potential customers. Another issue is, do you like to take risks? Now, taking risks is not really part of being an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur tries to avoid risk. They do that by learning as much as they can so they can reduce the risk. There's always risk. But what you want to do is reframe the question in terms of, hey, do I want to have a guaranteed salary, or do I want to be an entrepreneur and maybe make more or be able to do more or do things my way or whatever have you, for whatever reason? Then there's the question of fear. How much fear do you have? Do you fear losing control? Do you fear having control? Are you ashamed of failing? Any of these reasons might be a reason why you don't want to be an entrepreneur. Then there's one. Oh, I want to be rich. Therefore, I need to be an entrepreneur. No. Study after study has shown that most people who are, quote, rich do so by having a steady savings program, building up equity in property and in savings accounts. On the other hand, there are those who do grab the brass ring. If you think you've got that one opportunity, then you need to explore it, because it can make it all worthwhile. Now let's talk about reality. And here we have the parable of the fig tree. Now, as you can see here, there's the tree. It's a fig tree. Notice up in the upper right-hand corner, the birds. They're sitting on the flowers, and guess what they're doing? They're eating the fruit at the top of the tree. Now, notice the rodent down at the bottom. Guess what that rodent is doing? It's climbing the tree and eating all the fruit at the bottom of the tree. And then there's you. Notice how you're sort of in between the birds and the rodents. The only figs you're going to get are those that you're able to climb up and get. Which means that, one, you need to identify that you want figs. You have a hunger for them. Second, that you can climb. And third, you have the willingness to climb. Business opportunities have the same requirements. You have to have the alignment of a market need. That's the hunger. You have to have your personal competence, the ability to do whatever it is you have to do, or in this case, reach the figs. And you have to have either the values or the motivation, the willingness to go get them. The fruit here in this picture, or business opportunities, are only opportunities if you can reach them and you want to reach them. So the moral is, make sure that you have an unusual ability to soothe a market need or pain, and that you're excited about doing so.